And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here it is, Taco Tuesday. Beautiful, beautiful day. We have had tons and tons and tons of rain, and everything's green, 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 lush. And I'm at one of my friends, helping them out and doing my laundry and stuff like that. And they have the internet, so online. But they're about 20 miles from the deep green, so and my buddy came over. It's his beater, right? That won't start for me. And he just got in the car, put the key in, cranked it up, bang, started. It's like, what? And that is why I call that vehicle God's vehicle. Because if it wants me to go someplace, it starts up. If it doesn't want me, if it wants me to stay home and read the Bible and work on things, that's what I do. So, and see, that is kind of the essence of this life. Um, Now, all the religions that are on in humanity's experience, Christianity, Islam, Hebrewness, Buddhism, um, Hindu, and tons of more, right? And they're all basically the same thing, one God. I mean, there are other divinities around. Roman Catholic Church has saints. Um, the Hebrews have prophets. Um, Islam has prophets too. Um, but they're all basically ethnocentric, right? They're all about their culture. So no one should get upset about them. They all, Allah Akbar, meaning God is good, or praise God. And that's like, praise God, praise Jesus, what Johnny Boy says all the time. So, oh, is the chatty thing on? Let's see. Let's chat to ourselves, see what it comes up. Yeah, the chatty thing works, so you want to say anything. So, um, I'm a student, a itinerant scholar. I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? Shamanism, what is that, right? It's a worldview, as most religions are, right? And the worldview is this window we look out, right? And the glass is our eyeballs, our imaginary mirror. When we sleep, um, and we have rapid eye movement, you know, we're living in another dimension, basically. Right? And if you are consciously aware, I am, and that's a little prayer you should say all the time, consciously aware I am, consciously aware I am, consciously aware I am. Om. Meaning, I am conscious of the God within me. Right? I am consciously aware that I am God's doula, right? And what is that word in Greek? Slave. I'm God's slave. I do whatever he says, Now, usually you don't hear, Johnny's going on about how he can hear voices in his walls and the people, that are a quarter mile away from him, he can hear them talking smack about it. I mean, come on, no, that's, so if you're hearing voices, guys, you got to check the level of your medication. But if you are sensitive to God's love, right, and the connection, the intimacy, if you read the Bible, so that's why I read the Bible all the time, right? I read it at least 1 to 2 hours every day, right? And not like, the Hebrews did, the priests in the synagogue, in the temple, the guys who had all the robes and the fancy hats and a block of wood tied to their head. You know what that's for? It's because they got that close to the holy book and they didn't touch it. The block of wood would stop their head from touching God, and they would read the holy word. And that's how a lot of people read the Bible. They quote it all the time. I was talking to my sis. I have a bunch of sisters. My youngest sister, I'm the youngest of all of us, right? I'm the baby, right? And because at 6 months old, I electrocuted my mother by sticking a knife into the electric socket. And I had a 50-50 chance. I could have stuck it into the neutral side, and I wouldn't have felt anything. I was stuck in the hot side. I was like, and because I was like in my onesie and I wasn't touching any metal, and I was on a synthetic carpet, I just got the like a little tingle in my happy place, right? And I was like, and the story is that I was spitting out sparks. As an electrician, a physicist, but anyway, the sister I was talking to last night, she was 3 years older than me, and she was the princess, the youngest one. And then I took her place, and so she tried to kill me a few times. Like she tried to stab me in the head. This scar right here. She had it was Easter, and there was this metal bunny my parents had that they kept chocolate in when we wake up. Oh, chocolate! And he had a little wheelbarrow. She picked it up and whacked me in the head with it. Two metal ears stuck into my head, and so and thanks when I was 3, she tried to drown me in a bucket of black paint. Right. I don't know where she got it, but I was sitting in the middle of the living room. They just had a brand new wall-to-wall carpet put in. I was just sitting there, and she tried to stick this bucket on my head, and the black went all over me. And you know, my mother was, and she grabbed me, threw me in the bathtub, turned a shower on me, and then went in, and she basically scrubbed the whole rug. So, and because you're never going to get that, it was like a white, 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 white. What's this thing saying? Update. No, no. Don't show this again. I'm in the middle of a show. You know what? They really want to do this. Don't show this again. Come on, get rid of it. There it is. Say goodbye, Georgie. Anyway, my sister has been that, and yet we're very close because she was the closest one to me. So once she tried to kill me a couple of times, didn't work. You know, so she always used me as a scapegoat. Well, look what he's doing. You know? So that's kind of why my mom handed me up to my father's mother, my grandma, my Italian grandma, and I grew up in Harlem, and then grew up in Long Island, right, not too far from my folks. And I stayed mostly with my grandmother until I was about 7, and then I was brought back into the fold of the feral weasels of a family that I had. And so I had, you know, many, because my grandmother had some really interesting friends, grown ups, where my grandma would have to do, she just kind of, like it was when I lived in Harlem, we lived right off of Central Park, right off of Fifth Avenue in a brownstone, really nice. Our front lawn was Central Park, way up north. And to the way east, like about 4 blocks this way, was Second Avenue, and from like 34th Street all the way up to the Harlem River, there was, every 4 blocks was a different nationality: Irish, Italian, German, Lithuanian, you name it. And not just that, but each of those countries have sects of people, right? Just like we have 50 states. Okay, hot dog. It's okay. It's okay. Hot dog. He's a good watchdog. He barks at the cats. And so anyway, I was talking to my sis, right? I want to try to kill me. And she's now a born again Christian, and she can quote you it like nobody's business, right? That's nice. I read it, right? So when I read it, it affects me, right? And then I write, right? It's my thing that gets me into hot dog. It's okay. These guys have like 40 cats, 2 dogs, 4 cats, and they're nice cats. They're all very nice. They're very they have a farm, and so, and before the cats, they always had vermin. Every name, you name it, they had it, because that's what you get on a farm. But those cats, no more rats, no more mice, no more voles, no more, you name it, nothing. Even the cats go after the the bad teenagers, raccoons. So anyway, and Hot Dog is just trying to show the family that yeah, he's still on guard. He's got it covered. Anyway, what else can I say? So I was talking to my sis, and she was going on, and I try to stay way far away. I mean, she knows I'm a Christian. She knows that because my whole life, I was born to be a Catholic priest. So from birth until when I went to the seminary, they tried to kill me because I wasn't their kind of priest. I didn't want to lie, cheat, or steal. I wanted to do what Jesus was, go work with the poor, help the innocent, right the wrongs. That's how I saw what Jesus was doing. Right? Bring the good news, right? So I got, I've been trying, the Holy Roman Empire has tried to murder me a number of times. When I was in first grade, this nun murdered me, crushed my esophagus, broke the orbit in this eye, the little stirrup in this ear. So I'm kind of deaf and kind of blind, but I can still see and I can still hear. And actually, what's interesting, what they did to my eye, this eye, when she whacked me there and broke my jaw and the orbit. So it squeezed the eye this way. So I see it, the lens is in a whole different configuration. And so I see other frequencies of energy other than, just the spectrum of visible light. And so that enables me to see people, right? Not like ghosts or anything, but you. I'm looking at you. I can look at the pale of your skin. I can see how you're sweating. I can, all of the above, all those really very subtle things, which most people can't see, but this eye does. Right? The ear is like radar. I can tell, who's there. I can hear car engines and tell you whose car it is, right? And my nose, which was broken also, and kind of when she broke my jaw, kind of moved my sinuses into a different part of my head. So anyway, I have all my senses, but they don't work like your average guys. And so once I kind of got out of the hospital, I had a cast on my head for about 3 months. Once I got out of that, Cardinal Cushing put me into the Maryknolls, they had a sanctuary in Garden City, which was like this big castle of a house, 140 people lived there, 70 nuns, 70 priests, and they lived, they wore city clothes, and they worked together. It was a community, and they were all, brilliant people, PhDs, every one of them. And they were working in jails and working in hospitals and doing this, but doing research on, the bandwidth of the light coming from Jupiter. So from about, how old was I? However old you are in first grade, until my parents moved to Oldfield, and which was a farm area just like this, but flat. Long Island's flat, right? And it was the Garden of Eden for New York City. All the vegetables were grown there. And New York City grew more potatoes than Idaho, right? And more corn than Kansas, right? Did grow wheat, but corn and potatoes lots, and lots of vegetables, right? And so we moved to this place where we were right on the water, the Long Island Sound. And it was the last, Long Island Railroad had many things that went out across Long Island, not just one train line. But this was at the end of that one, right? That went to Glen Cove and kept going. And that was the end of that one, like on the North Shore line, right? And the center one, that went through Freeport and Islip and stopped at Shelter Island, which is almost the end. And then there was another one that went along there are two more that went into past Queens, into where, like, big housing projects were. So anyway, in third grade, I moved there, and that was a great school system. It really was, because they had just changed from being a very rural one to being this more suburban, right? And they, instead of just squishing everybody together, they built a complex, like a campus. And the old high school they made into the grammar school. And it was a big high school, so it was a big grammar school. So all the little grammar schools fit in there, and they still had, we had about 18 to 22 kids a class, which is not bad. And but in the little red schoolhouse, they had 10 to 15 kids do a class. Anyway, so I had this really intense, almost, because when from birth 7, I lived right kind of near where George Carlin lived, where Columbia and Barnard and a whole bunch of other theological colleges, and there are 2 or 3 gigantic, big churches, and it was a very open, amazing community. And the public schools, the grammar school, high schools, were quasi in those institutions. Like there was the School of Music and Art was in, I think, Barnard, or part of, and also in Hunter. And when they built Lincoln Center, Juilliard kind of was over there. And so, and this was all still in the same kind of neighborhood, like between 68th Street up to the Harlem River, West Side to 3rd Avenue was that whole, and anything above 89th Street, you're starting to get into Harlem, right? I mean, there were fringy areas on either side. West Side was Caribbean, Hispanic, and East Side was European, and the black folk were, and it kind of started 125th Street, Etta Clayton Powell Boulevard. So I grew up in all that, and there were tons of coffee houses where all different languages were being spoken, and people were playing chess, and I'd just roam around and sit down, listen to these elder people talk about the most amazing things. So by the time I got to being murdered in Holy Redeemer School, which is short for Hitler's Rifle Squad, they had about 10 Nazis in that school, because the Vatican created the rat line and got about 1 million really nasty Nazis, just not Germans who, look the other way, into institutions. And about 100,000 came into the United States and went into all aspects of our culture and economy. And if you go and Google Operation Paperclip, the poster child for that was Werner von Braun and his Missile Boys. But that was just, it was about 200 of them, but they brought in over 100,000 into the United States alone. And 1 million, in Australia, you name it, they went all over that neck of the woods. That was far away from Europe, right? So South America, Africa, South Africa, very Nazi. And the South Africans, basically, the Nazis had made their own atomic and hydrogen bomb. How do you kill 60 million Russians in less than 3 years? You're sure not going to do it with bullets and bombs. So that is the picture of kind of where we are, but no one sees that. Nobody wants to talk about that. So I was talking to my sis, and I was just being general about around here. It's been raining, and it's kind of sunny, and everything's green. It's pretty, and I don't have a thing, so I'm in the deep green by myself all the time, reading the Bible and writing novels. And I'm telling her about my novels, and she was like ordering fast food. The only time she ever talks to me is when she's like my brother, my oldest brother. He used to only talk to me when he was on the line with the fast food. And so, anyway, so we, and she knows I'm very, I went to read school to be a Catholic priest, and then 15 years later, I was in a Lubavitcher studying to be a Jewish rabbi, So she knows and she would come and visit me in New York. wherever I was, and I always was having. I mean, she came to, I had this really nice burned out building on the Lower East Side off of Avenue B, and people like who was there? Julian Beck, Judith Molina, um, Dolly was there at the time. Brzezinski, the poet. I'm mutilating his name. Andy Warhol. So those are people that, if you knew just a little bit, see TV Guide, you'd see these guys. And at the time, my girlfriend was a Ford model. So there were all these girls that were like, and everybody else, homeless people, other notorieties that unless you're in that discipline, you don't know who they are. And other girlfriends that I had. Meaning, when I would have a girlfriend, I would be totally devoted to them 190%. And whenever, for whatever reason, that time was up, we would split and still be best buds with benefits, right? And I still have a number of girlfriends, and I call it now affairs to remember, right? And so, let's see. Who takes them? There's, I didn't even get my glasses to read. Hey, guys, when you print something, put it all in caps so I can read it, because I can see from like about here until infinity, but from here to my eyeball I can't see. So, if you and that's message retracted. Buckhold boy, okay, whatever that means. So anyway, come on, guys, you'll be there. You should at least give me some thumbs up. Let's get this channel going. I have about 500 people who subscribe. Let's see. Let's get my glasses on here so I can read it. Watch Jordan. Oh, Jordan Maxwell. I know him personally. Big boy, right? We were both big boys. He used to come and lecture at what was that organization I was part of? It'll pop into my mind. And Preston Nichols was part of that. Al Bielek, Duncan, an alien named Dirk George, George Christie, who he started Intelsat. He was a student of Tesla's. I can't believe I forget the name of this thing. It'll pop into my mind. Anyway, and we in 1984 we had the first real Congress. We were celebrating the 91 Paris Accords. 1891, right? And so anyway, and the guy who wrote "Behold the Pale Horse." When you get old, you forget this stuff. Their names. I kind of wired into my brain. So if a bag was ever put over my head and they hit me with a needle and they wanted to know something, I could tell them everything, but not people's names or where we were or what time it was, right? So it's on the edge. Universal, no. Anyway. So we did it in the United Nations. I got pictures and everything. And Satan was there too. I've met Satan many times. Lucifer, Satan. When they introduce themselves in a different name, but they always wear the same suit. This black Armani suit that they always look like, yo, you look good. So anyway, yeah, Jordan Maxwell. He's Bill Cooper. Thank you. And so I knew Bill pretty good, and I visited him out west. He died out west, and I kept telling him, I said, listen, Bill, you got a great life. We were in the Navy. You got a nice pension. You got a shtick going on. You got a beautiful family. If you just dial it back, they'll leave you alone. Well, he didn't. He always was in their face, and they found some excuse and went on his front door, and he ended up dead. And that's the whole thing. You can end up dead very easily. Now, I've died so many times, it doesn't matter to me. And I'm doing my best, in 2014, I really died and went up and everyone's, hey, welcome home. And, my master, not God, but my teacher, Akasha K, he said, hey, you're doing a great job, right? And I said, what are you talking about? I'm dead. He goes, nah, you're just kind of dead. You want to stay here? Did they tell the truth? Yes, they did. But see, the truth is very subjective. It's not objective. Truth. I mean, just look at Donald Trump and Jojo, the used car salesman, and everyone in Congress. They're all telling the truth, lying through their teeth. I mean, so that was my sister's shtick. She goes, Donald Trump is our savior. I said, you're a Christian, by saying that that's a false God there. That's like, well, he's sent by God. I said, when someone in your family talks to you like that, you go, whoa. Let's see. In Michigan now, thunderstorms, yeah. Scattered showers, high 80s. How is it there? Right now, it's beautiful. And since March, we've had 200 inches of rain, which is like, but we're up in the mountains and it goes down and gets everyone below. And we have two gigantic lakes. And when we had a rainstorm where we got 20 inches of rain in less than 48 hours, right? And so they emptied the lake almost down to the bottom, right? And this lake, they built a little dam between two mountains, and this whole water reservoir of the lake is Sawtooth Mountain ranges. And so the lake is not just one big thing, but all over the place. And so it's great for fishing. The crazed fishermen come up here and fish. But the two corporations, the mob, that are laundering money through real estate, and that's what real estate is, a vehicle to launder money, basically has built, I don't know how they did it, but they built about 300 houses, big $1 million houses on the lake, where it was like, a national forest. You're not supposed to, I don't know who they paid or how they did it, but they did it. And because in TVA, you got to have your house back and up by at least 200 feet, if not more. So your septic system doesn't go in the lake. At least people put all their properties right on the friggin' lake. So yeah, so they have a septic tank and a leach line, but it's like right there in the lake. So this place is so sensitive. Nature responds like that. When you're like in a big city or a suburb or a place where people have been for 100 years, nature is kind of, but that whole part of the lake that always was this really steely blue lake, because it's pretty deep when it's filled up. And it's now green with algae blooms. Never had algae blooms, ever, 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 ever. So this place is, and the trees are dying. 6 of those 300 houses they built, big trees. I mean, they had leaves on them and everything. It looked nice, but big tree. And so anyway, all this rainwater, I would say there's going to be 20 houses that are going to be whacked like that. So nature is not waiting hundreds of years for its karmic release. It's going at it right away. Let's see. Donald Trump, George. No. Geoengineering. Yeah, I would say yes. I'd say, it looks like another species from another galaxy is geoengineering us. Why would Don be George? Yes, he's not. But Don is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is, you look at it, his uncle John was one of the highest level physicists, scientists. Like when Tesla died, the FBI took Donald Trump's uncle John to the New Yorker hotel where all these trunks of all of Tesla's patents and writings and research were. And basically there was a deal with the Russians that the FBI and John Trump went in there first. And he, and all of those like early UFO entities, like Blue Book, and there's about four other ones that people don't know about. Donald Trump's uncle was on all of them, right? And he was on all of these other, things like I was, But I was just a guy over, 5, 10 layers below, and I would work for the guys who were on the second or third level, um, doing all the research and thinking outside the box and having dinners with them, saying, "Well, I read all this stuff, and this is what I think, and here I wrote this up, but let's talk about it, right?" And we'd have a nice thing of sherry, and I did that for 30 years. They paid me really good, and I went to at least 60 different universities and research facilities, Los Alamos, Sandias, Kirkland Air Force Base, all that kind of stuff. And I never wanted to be. A number of times, oh boy, you're one of us. We want you in this. See this little hat here, U.S. Air Force. I got a lot of these. I work for these guys. My dad was a bird colonel in the Air Force, so I come from that gene pool. So Donald Trump is what is known as the usual suspect, right? So Donald Trump is his little shtick, because he was. If you ever saw Spielberg's Back to the Future, Biff. Biff is Biff is actually Donald Trump's son, Barron. That's smarter than Biff, right? In that gene pool, because the person who really ran everything in Donald Trump's White House was his daughter. And there are people who had their little tape recorders in when they were talking. And she is white like this, when she's not talking like this in front of the microphone. Look at my tits, And her husband is that's and if you should go to Saturday Night Live, and they did a few skits of those two in the White House with Donald, and so that's the world we live in, kids. And so my sister, without very little, because I said, sis, there is no difference between JoJo and Donald. And what are you talking about? Donald's the chosen one. I said, what? And she just went off, right? And it just went off and off and off and off about everything. And I was like, she's, on the West Coast, and so I was just musing about that. And then I talked to this other guy who thinks just because he's read a few books, he knows everything about the Mideast, and he's talked to a few. He went and spent 2 weeks in the Mideast in 1980. It's like, his whole thing is, well, why don't the what's his name, those Palestinians, why do they always say from the river to the sea? And I said, really, the guys who say that are the Zionists. They're the ones in 1947 who coined that phrase, not Palestinians. Well, why didn't they just go with what the UN wanted in 47? And I said, well, they did, and the Israelis said, well, we're not doing it unless we have this, this, and this, and those were like game changers to the Palestinians, because they basically said, oh, we're just going to make it all one thing. Palestinians can come in and be citizens, but they'll have no rights. We can tell them and arrest them and tell them what to do and how to go and what to do. Kind of like the Palestinians, 20% of all the Israeli citizens in Israel are Palestinians, right? And they're not just all Muslims, they're Muslim or Christians. And a good third of the folks who are in the Gaza Strip aren't Muslims, right? They're Christians or Jews even, or different sects of the Judaism. There's a whole different, because Islam was part of Judaism, right? Anyway, so my sister goes on, and she's right because she can quote the Bible. Well, that's nice. You should read the Bible and have that inform your worldview, right? and try to take from the Bible. The Bible is written as a story, right? To kind of involve you emotionally. It's not a rule book. It's not the YouTube of how to do it. So good old Gene Roddenberry. Is that somebody talk about Gene? No, geoengineering. Let's see what these guys were saying. Michigan, Donald Trump, George. No, he's not. Watch Jordan Maxwell. Yes, right. So Jordan Maxwell was great to hang out. He had great stories, and he is a fund of information. You want to know anything about Admiralty law? He is your boy. And what's her name? Catherine Austin Fitts is another one who I knew. So they would go to all these. This is way back in the 80s, before anybody went to conferences, just guys like us. And those guys were having serious issues. The government was going after them. Me, I was just an artist, and I was just, worked at the UN and NGO on alternative energy and technology, and did interesting things. And rich people kind of put money in grants. I would write grants and get that money and do stuff, and everyone enjoyed the fact that that's what was going on. I was trying to change, meaning everything I ever did, I went to the powers that be and said, listen, guys, if we do this, it's like a good example is Soho, right? South of Houston. That's what Soho stands for. And Tribeca is Triangle Canal, right? So I was living in those buildings because the Grandpa Stoll worked for that whole area was the factory part of New York in the 1880s, right? And streets were really wide because they had no electricity. They had some DC in the ground, but and these buildings were very large, and had gigantic windows, and they were set apart from each other so sun could come in because they had no real illumination, not like factories today. And so these were great for artists. And after 1951, nobody wanted them, and there were certain factories had these ancient machines that were still knocking stuff out, especially for the garment district. And I worked for the guy who basically built those buildings and put those machines there, and nobody could fix them. Grandpa Stoll could. So I was his protege. And so when I got to be, 17, 18, 19, 20, I was fixing those stuff up. And Benny, the guy who is the super for, everything on Worcester Street and Thompson and Spring, we were buds, right? And his real, him being the super for the real estate company, Sylvan Lawrence, but who really owned that property was Con Edison, because they were going to build a nuclear power plant right there and take all that hot water. See, Edison couldn't transmit DC current more than 6 miles. So they had these things called dynamotors, where the motor would run the generator and then shoot it 6 miles and then do it again and again and again. And they were all over Manhattan. And the wire size was like, copper was like that big. So, so the center of all that was Soho. They're going to build a nuclear power plant, take all that hot water and put it in their steam system that went all the way up to Harlem. And they sold that steam, not just to, they had that steam not just to generate electricity, but to put it into apartment buildings and radiators. So they were going to take all the hot water from the reactor and shoot it all through Manhattan and put it in people's apartments in their radiators. Good idea. And the NRC, or Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC before the atomic, whatever it's called now. Anyway, so those guys said, I don't know if that's a good idea. So they didn't do it, and they built it up there in along the Hudson, up in whatever it's called, just outside of New York, right? So that was like a piece of real estate that nobody wanted, right? Except there were, about 25% of it was being used for these old factories that were still making stuff, right? Buttons and twirly things that went on drapes. And anyway, so Grandpa Stahl was the only guy who could fix this stuff. And so I would go with him when I was, I started working for him at 9. So I had a bag of tools that I would carry. And, when he'd say, oh, we have to change that circuit, go check over there. So that's how I learned to be a great electrician. And my main job with Grandpa Stahl was to make sure he didn't walk in front of a bus, right? So, because his mind would wander, he'd be telling stories, blah, blah, blah. So I got to know those, Benny, who was like the king of that. And what Benny's real thing was, in the basements, he had smashed through all these basements, and he had a 24/7 wild, crazy, I don't know, that scene from any scene you see of the underground civilization, like, Escape from Manhattan and Snake Plissken and the one with Judge Dredd, that one with they go underground, Arnold, not Arnold, but what's his name? Tony. Anyway, so that's what was under there. And so he had prostitution and drugs and music and booze and just a wild and crazy place to hang out. And I kept, so the first kind of theatrical lighting I did was at Fillmore East, right? And I worked for, Joshua Light Show and Pig Lights. What's the guy's name? It'll pop into my mind. But basically, my boss was Billy Graham, not the evangelist, but the nice Jewish boy that was quite a promoter. Bob Goddard was my boss, right? Anyway, so and so we did theaters, and I worked also for George and George, which is a big theater. They make the building, the everything, the grid, you name it. I worked for those guys, and I was their house electrician. So anyway, I had my chops down. So, I kept the basement of all of that was like my art. When I was going to wire something like a restaurant, or I would take the people down into the underground and show, because there was about 50 buildings that Benny had smashed through and made this underground, it was like the Vatican catacombs of good times. And so, so that's why I was the dude of Soho. So, and Andy Warhol had his loft on Union Square, and he was smart. He understood the law, and so he called his loft the factory. So when inspectors they'd see the sign saying the factory. Oh, look, it's a factory. We don't have to worry about it. Well, the other artists who were living, the city tried to throw them out. Building department, fire department gave them a hard time. So after, I've been doing this now for like 4 years and got to know all these amazing artists who were, Oldenburg, Rothschild, what's his name? Dali. But Dali had a lot of money. He didn't need to be there. I got to know Brooke Alexander, big time gallery owner, and Mary Boone, another big one. She was upcoming, and so I was the crossroads to all of it. I had a gallery on Broome Street, Broome and East Broadway, Una Bear Gallery with Phil and Jane Bear, and their first child was Una, so they called it Una Bear. Anyway, so you can look all of this stuff on Google, right? There are threads. You can see threads of me everywhere. I'm like the Forrest Gump of the esoteric, aesthetic universe of the late 20th century and early 21st. I still am, right? And that's why I do this show, and this show doesn't get messed with. They have me down on the bottom of a lot of people, I have this person I know who's a big time media entity in Europe, And they were telling me, you should have millions of followers. And they said the only reason you don't is that the powers that be are keeping you. You are like the loyal opposition, right? And you're a little bit more honest and free and spiritually open than somebody like Joe Rogan, right? That's what Joe Rogan is. He is the loyal opposition, and he's very superficial. I tell these long stories that are shamanic ceremonies, right? That's why you get the jazz that you get when you listen to me tell you stories, right? So let's see. What kind of Bible have you got? Well, I go to three different. I go to Klan Southern Baptist Church, and I go to the I Own Everything Methodist Church, and I go to the Pagan Catholic Church. So basically, they all have their own version of the King James. And the King James, back in the day when I was seminary, back when I was at not the seminary, but where I really got my theologic chops was when I was in that sanctuary run by the Maranols, right? They were brilliant. So I learned to read Greek and Hebrew, right? Not speak it too well, but read it, right? And if you really want to know the Bible, you'd be able to read Greek and Hebrew, because the grammar and aesthetic nature of those two books. And Jesus basically spoke to everybody in Hebrew and Greek. Greek was the English of the times, right? And so the King James is like a silly game of telephone where you had illiterate monkeys with typewriters turning that out, all during the Dark Ages. They had all these guys who were scribes. They couldn't read or write. They had nice handwriting, right? The nuns who hit you with a ruler to get nice hand. That's what these kids, they had nice handwriting so they could copy. So whenever you copy something like that, something goes amiss, right? So the King James was that, and then the person who did it was a theologian and a scholar who was traipsing around the Mediterranean up there near Greece and into Turkey and then over towards what is known as Jerusalem, or that whole neck of the woods, right? And that they're fighting over right now. And all that is just a bloody sacrifice. The war is just a shamanic black sacrifice. It has nothing to do with real reality. It's pushing these all people who have suffered total PTSD, and they are just taking it notch upon notch with each generation. And it is going to be the vehicle to really be, whoa, when you have 20 million people who are that wacko and want to kill anything in front of them, it's like The Walking Dead, and they're not dead. They can run and fly a jet plane. So, and they got nuclear weapons, right? And they're all over the planet. They're not just in Jerusalem, right? They're not just in that strip. They're not just over there, right? So anyway, the guy who wrote the King James, he was all of that is what the King James Bible is. So, but it's a mostly, predominant Bible. So, and the guys in the Southern Baptist Church, they get a lot of Bibles. They get a lot of books, and nobody reads them until I do. So I go through their book thing, and there's boxes of this book, right? Let's see, like this little book. Let's see, do I have it? Yes. No. Yes. It's right here. Oh, it's down here. I always keep books in my bag, but I have 3 different bags. Oh, so here is one thing they kind of put out. A Bible studies kind of, thing. And this is what we're supposed to use for, our Bible study, And so there's a section for each week. Here's, the identity of Jesus. And it is quite good, and I read it and I think this is really good. But do they use this to teach? No, they just give it to us because the company that puts this out gives money to the churches to give this out to their people and use it, allegedly using it to teach the people something somewhat relevant. And do we do that? No, none of the churches do that. The teachers are these people who, can, like my sister, can rant about this, that, or the other thing, and they do. When the thing happened in October 7, this one teacher says, "We're supposed to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about," and went on and on how we had to, as good Christians, kill all of everyone in the Gaza Strip, all the Palestinians. And I said, "Excuse me, but 30% of everybody in Palestine is not, Muslim. And in actuality, you have been collecting money for this worldwide thing to bring the word of Jesus. And your church, I kind of looked into this, your church has given about $80,000 over the last 30 years to Palestine itself. And there is a Baptist church that Israel blew up that you guys put 30 grand into that. There's a whole little operating theater that's named after this church at Israel blew up. And you don't know what you're talking about." And the lady, Ethel, who is the banker for the last 40 years, no, Al's right. This is, and half of that church doesn't speak up to these 6 guys, and they're just doing it for power, right? And they go on and on and on. And I go there and just, "Excuse me, but that's wrong." So they actually allow me to do that, right? And the weeks that I don't go because it's raining or the car doesn't start, or like this one, it was supposed to be torrential rain, but it was a beautiful day. Car didn't start. Fine. I made myself breakfast, made some coffee, started cleaning up, and looking at my lawn and doing other things and reading the Bible and talking to God. And not many people do that. But when I go to church, that's what I do. And a good portion of all 3 churches, because the Methodist, when I told them, she goes, "Why don't you just go to our church?" And she said, "What church do you go to?" I said, "Well, I go to this Baptist." "They're heathens, those Baptists," right? And when I told the Baptist I was going to, "They're heathens," right? And then when I told both of them that I was going to the Catholic church, they're just pagans, So if you want to talk about any Bible, it's irrelevant, right? Now you read the Bible and let it talk to you. Because, see, that's the amazing thing. When I learned to read Greek and Hebrew, and why the rabbis, or the priests, not the rabbis are just teachers. They're really nothing special. The priest who gets to go in the room of the Holy Holies, the guy with a block of wood on his head, right? There's about 5 different, there's the Pharisees, the rabbi, the priests, and then 2 other, one is a soldier guy, starts with an L, and the other guys, right? And the Samaritans, they're, if anyone was going to say, "What religious sect are you?" I'd say, "I'm a Samaritan." And what they were the Christian, Jewish, Muslim folk who loved everybody and helped everybody. But all of those sects hated them because they wouldn't choose which one to be. Right? And that's why the Good Samaritan. Right? Anyway, I still have it too. Let's see. I found a cross in the road once. I wish I could upload pictures. Yeah, I can see it though. I can see the road and the cross. Was it metal or wood? And did it have tire marks on it? Anyway, see, it's what's in your heart that counts, right? Not like. And my sister, she's trying, but see, what happens is people have trauma in their life. And that's why the world gets whacked out, because people, have to get things like my friend. She's out there. She doesn't mow the lawn, but she likes doing it, right? Because at the end, it's like, looks pretty. It's all good. It looks pretty, meaning I only mow my lawn every 2 to 3 weeks. Everyone else around here is mowing it every week, right? Because I let my when I do that, it grows up. So it's getting really down below, because I made my front lawn on top of 4 inches of crushed run, because I live in a holler. That's the bog, and I needed really drainage. But my whole, let's see if I got some pictures of The deep green. I think I do. I think I do. Yes. Let's see if we can get this to work. Oops. This is see, this is the problem. Trying to get the electronic world. No, I don't want to do that. I want to go back. I want to go back. I want to go back. I guess I'll look at that. Yeah, here we go. Mm-hmm. So this is my deep green. So all of this, right? All of this. See the trees way up here. There's my. This is a logging road I live on. That's about it. So there's my front lawn. And so all of that, it was all big oaks and pines and birch and maple, and I had an arborist come and take them all out, and I cleared everything up. You know, I have 2 acres, and I cleared out 3/4 of an acre. I scraped it to the dirt, right? And then I covered it all with. I had French drains in there to take the water away, and you can see it's all going downhill. And so, and then I planted everything that you see. I got at out in Food Lion and Big Lots, right? And they would get plants and put them out front on pallets. And when it came down to like they were about to throw these things into the dumpster, said, "Hey, can I buy these up? Yeah. What do you want to give us? How about $3? Just get it out of here, right?" So I get 5 or 6 bushes, trees, all kinds of stuff, and plant them. For $5 you get 20 trees and 15 bushes and a whole bunch of other stuff, and you plant them there. So 20 years later, that's what it looks like, right? And so the trees got bigger and bigger, and the leaves from the really big trees, the poplars, grew up. When I moved there, the poplars were maybe 30 feet high. Now they're about 120. They're like weeds, and they're not supposed to grow there. But because I made a big space and gave them a lot of light, they have become gigantic, right? So, and they have, because all the other area around me, because all the trees, because everything is sawtooth mountain ranges and very drastic elevation changes, within a very short space. It's like an accordion. Everything's been squished between the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge, right? For about 100 miles long and about 20 miles wide, right? And and at both ends are 2 gigantic TVA lakes, right? Because there's a ton of water that's always going through there. And it would wash, like Jonesboro and Johnson City and Kingsport, which were all the like Silicon Valley of the 1890s, because there was a lot of water for power. There was a good chunk of coal, and on the edges there was natural gas, a lot of natural gas, and some oil, but natural gas. And natural gas is the alchemist's dream. It can be turned. That's what basically plastic is: electricity and natural gas, and a few other things, and a little alchemy. You get plastic, right? So, and if you can take oil and crack it, these big tall things, and it breaks it down into different components by their octane and their zine characteristics. So anyway, all of this is, and that's why we have on one end in Virginia, we have Virginia Tech. And on this end, you have in the middle, um, um, you know, Eastern Tennessee, ETSU, right? And then you have the National Laboratory in Oak Ridge. And that's why that, so that whole, two places where really wicked science was being done between the 1870s and 1930s was Long Island, Brookhaven National Laboratory, New York City, Manhattan. That's what the Manhattan Project was. It was called the Manhattan Project because Nikola Tesla lived in the New Yorker hotel, and they would get him out and do all these, time. That's what the Philadelphia experiment was. On and on and on. Go talk to Preston Nichols. So I was part of the name of that organization. It was like basically funded by DARPA, but it was DARPA funds everything, right? And half the people I worked for 30 years were DARPA outgrowths, right? Because like when I was at Duke and we were actually developing the secret soldier, the thing in Captain America, we were doing that, right? Because the Nazis had done it, and Duke University had a big paranormal um, part of their psychology department. And that was taken over by DARPA to do this super soldier thing. And I stumbled into it. Um, I was hiding from my draft board, not breaking the law, but I was hiding in plain sight. I mean, I'd go hang out in colleges and either look like a professor or a student, right? And at Duke, I stumbled across this brilliant young girl, um, and she took me to her sorority with all these brilliant young girls that no boys, they were all cute and sexy and liberated, and all the boys were scared of them. And their den mother, she was the head librarian at Duke, right? She was the head. What do you call those people? They take care of the documents. There's a term for them. It'll pop into my mouth. But anyway, she, she said, "You're cute." I became her pool boy, and the rest of the girls sandwich meat, And so I got a little Carol in the research library at Duke, so I could hide away in there. And she she got paid not only by Duke but all these other entities. She knew how to play the research market, and people who were doing research. Duke had a very excellent esoteric and old historical and occult library, and and pretty much anything that has to do with physics, or you want to know the real thing about history, Duke has that. Almost not quite as good as Trinity in Dublin. Trinity has the best, right? The Vatican has really the best, and Trinity has probably the best that's kind of in public access. But all these libraries, the public can't just walk in. They they have gatekeepers, right? And this lady who ran the sorority was a gatekeeper. So anyway, I was in that entity, and hiding amongst. And I had a lot of friends from prep school who went to Duke. So I was either at the fraternity house, hanging with those guys, or in the sorority, servicing those girls, and just had a plain old good old time. I still do, right? Lutheran. Oh, there's Jamie. What kind of Bible have we got? King James. So, but I got others too. But I use that as my guys. Anybody wants to read? My newest novel I'm working on is called Miss Kitty's Electromagnetic Sorority, and basically it's about the Trinity. The Trinity is Jesus because he's God, and Satan, who's Jesus's brother, and the Holy Spirit, Miss Kitty, right? And God head is kind of a doddering old fool, and that's why things are the way they are, right? And so I have that. I will go on my other device and read it to you. I read some of it. You can go back a couple of shows. I read some of it on the show, and you can. And anybody who wants to read my writings, my novels, any of the above, you can go to this thing called XRATTED blog.blogspot.com. It's also under Griot Publishing. But they've changed their way of doing things so many times I can't understand how to do it. It's up there. You can go see it if you can find it. But if you drop me a line on my email, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 at Gmail, and you are on Gmail, I can send that document to you like that. No problemo. Now, if you're doing your email through another server, I can do it. It's just a little more complicated. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So if you wanted to, you could just get a Gmail account. Then it'd be real easy on your Sensei Al Bob here. And I could send you a lot of stuff. And it's tons of stories about all this stuff. U.S. Psychotronic Society. That's it. Go look that up. All of those guys were part of that. Right? That's how I met all that guys. They would come. We had a little common room under the basement of one in Lincoln Center, one in this super fancy condo, kind of across the street from Lincoln Center, and one in the UN. And we would have our little meetings. And the UN is so full, the NGOs, there's so many occult and esoteric entities in the UN, it's mind-boggling. I mean, the UN is just, and the US, the US is just one gigantic Masonic lodge. Just go to DC, see how it's basically laid out on a pentagon. That's why the Pentagon, right? The starred thing, all the main avenues. It's very interesting. And they weren't Christian, In God We Trust didn't show up on our money until 1957, 53, maybe, somewhere in there. Okay. The First Amendment. Anybody know what the First Amendment is? It's not free speech. It's that the Congress will make no law to have a state-run religion. There will be a separation between church and state. And because of this separation, there will be free speech. You can go to any church you want. You can talk about any God you want. You can have any service you want. You can have a congregation of people coming together, and we can't tell you not to do it. And the only time we ever did that was COVID. And, even, the scary one, virus, which is just like COVID, which is like the flu, that's what influenza was the Spanish flu. That killed millions. And in 1 year, it killed 60 million people across the planet. And we only had a population of 1 point something billion, So, yeah, I mean, things are going on that, please haven't, no one, everyone they know what's going on, right? And they are right and you are wrong. And they will scream at you louder and louder. And my sister was talking to me last night. She just screamed and screamed until her voice, and I didn't disagree with her at all. Right? And she goes, and Biden is destroying our oil industry. And no, that's not true. In the last 3 years of Biden, the U.S. has been the world's largest exporter of oil. We have the last 2 years we have exported more than 3 times the oil that Saudi Arabia exported that year. We have, in the last 2 years, we have exported more coal in the last 4 years, because instead of drilling holes in the ground in Kentucky and West Virginia, they're blowing off whole sides of mountains in Wyoming and Utah, and just scraping all the coal up and putting on a boat and sending it to China. And so No, we have sent more coal out of this country in the last 2 years than we have done in the last 50 years, and that was all under Biden, right? You know, what you call it? Wall Street is, at, the Dow is at 40,000, and Wall Street is just, you know legalized gambling, right? And so and it's fixed. So I would say that Donnie is going to become. It doesn't matter with Donnie or JoJo are president. Doesn't matter. It's just like in Iran, their president and their prime minister, died in a helicopter crash. It didn't make a difference. And the Iranian institutions aren't upset because they're just going to stick another two faces because the president and the prime minister had no real power, right? The head honcho is the guy who has all the power, and his little cadre. They're the ones who make the bid. The other guys, they go out and carry the law. I mean, this guy who died in a helicopter crash, he's got a lot of blood on his hands, and so he has been very violent to the Iranian people. That's why majority of the people, when this guy died and it came out on the media, but it was like shooting fireworks and dancing happy dances, right? And so and basically Iran was put there by the CIA. In the 1950s, early 1950s, when Iran was kind of unleashed from British Petroleum, there was a guy who was an economist and a scholar, and he became president. He was duly, freely elected. First, right, real democracy. They had a constitution. It was great. And what he said was, okay, all our resources, the government, we're not going to nationalize them. We're going to start our own for-profit oil company, and we will sell that on the open market. It's our oil, and England left because it had to, and we're doing it. So the CIA and Mossad and OSS and England's whatever they got, James Bond, they got rid of him and put in the Shaw, that had no legitimacy whatsoever, and he ran it for 30 years, and he ran it just, the way it worked was, okay, BP's coming back in, owns all the oil, we're taking care of that. We're going to give you X amount of money. You dump that into your national economy and just buy the people off, right? You got a small enough, educate them, give them houses, kind of what, Muammar Gaddafi did with Libya, right? And that'll be fine, right? And it was still a very much Islamic country, but very, just like America's a Christian country, it's the same kind, right? So everybody's more about, the jeans they were wearing and what car they had, and, they were into the materialism, blah, 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 right? And then in the 60s or so, the Shah was getting more, hey, I'm the boss, and he was stepping on people's toes and making it uncomfortable to live there. And so people said, no, this is, we're supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to have blah, blah, blah. And so he started offing people and putting them in jail and et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where that went. And so we took the Shah out, and we had kept the Ayatollah Khomeini in Paris for 20 years. And we used him as a leverage to the Shah, saying, hey, you do what we tell you to do, or we're bringing this fruitcake in and destroying the country. And we'll still own all the oil. And that's where it is today. We still own all that oil, and we have those guys in there keeping their country down. And so that's what we got going all across the world. There's entities that rule the world, right? And they're all interconnected, and they're all marching us towards why Gene Roddenberry had Star Trek on TV. It wasn't a wagon train in space. It was to get the world population. Why is Star Trek so popular all over the world? Is because it gave the template of the political structure of the Federation to Earth, right? And if you go see The Next Generation, the first show they had when they brought it out was something at Firepoint, right? And that's when they met Q, right? And that's kind of what the Federation is. It's this entity that pushes its extraction motif out into space, just like Avatar, they had the greedy corporate guys going for the cheddar and the tall blue guys who were the indigenous, you know, what could they do but, just stay out of the way and hope that the sky people wouldn't screw things up too much. So anyway, that's where we're at. And this show has been on now for an hour and 15 minutes. And any comments? So let's see. Let's take a look at what you guys have been saying. It's always good. This show is designed to have comments. It's a live chat, right? So, and you guys chat amongst yourself. I love the fact you do that. Francis Scott. Francis Scott Bridge. Right. Well, that was somebody's agenda took that sucker out because I have a friend who's I have friends over the years that I've worked for entities and got to go to conferences and meet people and blah blah blah. And this show has brought numerous folks into my little circle, and that's why get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42. If you live in America, I used to have WhatsApp, but they changed their thing. I can't even use that anymore. I'm being kept in a silo, which is fine, because at a certain point, it's obviously I'm being kept and basically kind of taken care of. There's and I'm learning how to live like a millionaire on $400 a month, and that's where the world's going. And so, at a certain point, and my physical, I've lost 220 pounds from where more than that. I was 460. I now weigh 210, so that's 4 to. I lost at least 200 pounds, probably 250 pounds, right? So, and I have, all my joints. I have arthritis, but I meditate and I Tai Chi and Qigong to the point where I'm just a little sore, meaning I have to move all the time. Like I've been sitting here now an hour and 17 minutes, and I really do have to get up. So think of something to say, and I'll be right back. See how long it takes me to get out of this chair. This is, I have to turn around and get myself where I got an open space. I have to kind of push myself in that direction where I have nothing to trip over, and then start moving a bit. And 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Just what it takes to get out of the chair. And where the real stress comes is on my knees and elbows, and because I had to lift myself up with my elbows. I'll leave you with that little image. Oh, not to stretch. I put my shoulders behind my butt. I'm semi-aligned. I'll be right back. Honey ham. Have you boys and girls been talking to each other here? That's what you should be doing. I forgot I was doing laundry. I had to empty the washer and put it in the dryer. And the whole laundry room is full of cats. Mm. Yep. Scorch are in more ways than one. All this rain, especially out west, they've had droughts for 30 years, and now pretty much I got a ton of water. And most of it they let go up into the ocean. A lot of things they could have done. Because last winter, they were starting to have a wet winter. And there are a lot of underground aquifers that they could have been collecting the water and putting it into the aquifer. They didn't do it. Because when people suggested this, Mr. Rothschild, who owns virtually all of the utilities in the United States, virtually all. He owns all the transmission lines, he owns all the generators, all the utilities in all the neighborhoods. That used to be public. Now he owns them. And that was part of the gig when we went bankrupt. Between 1968 and 91, we were bankrupt. And that was a period that Mr. Rothschild and his banks bought up all of America and the people. When we went up the gold standard, what we were backed with was by us. If you go to, someone was going on about, what's his name, Jordan Maxwell, Jordan Maxwell that's where, I was working at the Council on Foreign Relations at the time under Dr. Quigley. And you should read his book, Hope and Tragedy. And his protege, Gary Allen, wrote a great book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. So that puts it all down in reality, right? Whereas my sister was going, I live in the real world. I don't know where you live, but, okay, good luck with that. And I call all my brothers and sisters at least once or twice, maybe 3 times a month. My oldest sister, she'll pick up, right? Because she used to work at home and, basically was, chained to the desk so she could answer the phone. But she's retired now at like 90 something. And now she and her husband are like globetrotting. And, you're supposed to do that. I did all my globetrotting between age 14 and 34. And then a few of it when I became a itinerant scholar and a contract boy. I went to a few places. Like I went to Egypt and the Valley of the Kings and Iraq, right on the edge of Iraq. Up there, Iraq and Egypt and that whole neck of the woods up there, that's like a hotbed of some pretty wild stuff. And also over to Syria, where all the Asian temples were, with some pretty interesting technology there too. And so I got, in the latter, between 94 and 99, I maybe took 5 trips out of the country looking at interesting stuff. And twice I flew out on C-17s. I'm going to say subtle hint to who I was working for. So anyway, and I was always a contract guy. Many. Oh, you should work for us. You're really great. We could really help you. We would make a career. Blah 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 blah. That's kind of where I got this hat. I said, well, I like working for you guys, but I don't want to. Wow. So the scorcher thing. So what I see happening. So we're still having this rainfall. So right here, right now, I'm in a place that it's going to keep raining, but all around is crazy weather. The Ohio Valley, they've been hit by tornadoes like they never had been hit, and that's going to and it's been like inching its way towards upstate New York and into Vermont and Maine and Massachusetts. They're going to have some, and the hot spots of the fires of last summer that basically turned, meaning New York City was hit by fire from 1,800 miles away. It's a physical impossibility for a forest fire to do that, because for the smoke to travel that far, it has to go way high up in the troposphere. Most the soot of fires in forests is very thick and heavy, so it doesn't really get above, I don't know, 10,000 feet, if that. And then because it usually causes rain, it gets brought down. Within forest fire here, the smoke doesn't usually go more than 20 miles to 100 miles away. This went 1,800 miles away. And by the time it got to New York, it was microscopic particles. That's why it went up so high, because there was no way to it. So the only way that those fires could have produced that from burning those trees is if they were hit with direct energy weapons, DEWs, right? And if you go on, I don't know if they're still there, but a friend of mine sent me an image of Canadian fire last summer, and it was 900 miles, and it was a line of red white, right? And by its color temperature, it was close to 3,000 degrees. Forest fires don't burn that hot. And it was producing this almost microscopic material that when it, and like why in Hawaii, Kauai, that little town that got incinerated, they're not letting people in. You can't go. It's dangerous, because how it was incinerated so totally was they used space-based energy weapons, right? And they lost 1,000 people. Oh, only 100 people died. Well, they didn't find any bodies, and they don't want people to go in and scoop up dirt because there's DNA that has been molecularly changed in that dirt, right? So, because they say, oh, it was caused by this hurricane that was way over here. There's really tremendous winds. Well, just 6 miles over here, where Sandals was, there were girls out there in their thongs drinking cocktails with umbrellas in them, and on 6 miles on the other side, the same thing. They didn't get blown away. They didn't have a big fire. They didn't even know what was going on. But that part of Maui, that part of Kauai, which was the last refuge of the spiritual sanctuary, the Hawaiian people, it got incinerated. Right? And then good old, what's her name? Who's a black woman, Oprah. She went and tried to buy up everything, along with Tom Hanks and a few other Hollywood buddies. So yes, it's a brave new world we're in. So what do you guys think? I just ranted. I'm gonna go make myself a sandwich now. So come on, let's hear something from you guys. Come on. So the scorcherness is we're gonna have all around the United States, especially Texas. Texas is going to be incinerated. And so is chunks of California, incinerated, right? Where people won't be able to live there. Just, Kauai was the demonstration model of that, right? So all those, Governor Abbott and all those freak show people. Again, I have nothing against those folk. Whatever they want to do. They, like I live in a freak show state, Tennessee. They have abortion. You think of it, you're going to jail, right? And what's happened here? See, they don't understand the consequences. So almost 80% of all the OBGYNs have left Tennessee. There is no girl doctors, right? And who it's hitting the poor never had them to begin with, and so they have, grandma helping them out. But the rich people who are in the fancy cities of Tennessee, those women who are all, abortion, the life starts at the thought of the sperm. That's when life starts, when you just think of it, just read your Bible, it says so, Now those girls, they have no doctors to take care of the hoo-hoo. It's starting to smell down there. What's wrong? Well, there's no doctor. We can give you a foot doctor. He can stick his foot up in your hoo-hoo and see what's going on. I mean, that's where medicine is. And hey, I think it's great. More to it. Let's have more of that. So what do you think? I'm going to go make myself a sandwich. Oh, I might grab some kitties. Because there's just over there's 1,000 of them. Oh, ooh. I grabbed one of these guys. Yeah? 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 Where's mommy, right? What happened? Where's the box? Where are my brothers and sisters? No? Come on, stick around. Okay, back to the box for her. Get in there. Yeah, get in there. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's the kitties. They are so sweet. The mommy is not much older than a kitty, but they got a lot of them. I don't know about 40, but almost. They're all over the place. Like I said, there isn't a single piece of vermin anywhere. You know? So everyone seems to be happy. And the cats are, they're very good at staying out of the way. Sometimes cats can be a little too much, but these guys, they're very good at staying out of the way. Yeah, come on. A little pig for you and a little pig for me. Mm. Mm. So, the same as it ever was. Yeah, look at all the points in history. Remember, they were rebranding. When we went from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire, they were rebranding. And Paul, he was like John. Mm, 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 mm. So, what you guys see in this country, people go, "Oh, what the kids are doing in the college is so terrible." Blah blah blah. Well, when I was a kid in college, I left college because 1969 Democrat convention in Chicago, which I think it's going to be there again this year. There were about, I don't know, 40,000 kids in the streets, and it was like just a May, just a street fight between those kids and all of the police, and it was on TV. I was on the front carpet in front of the TV in my girlfriend's house up in Maine, and her family loved me. They had three sisters, and when I was 14 or 13, just before I went into the seminary, I was sent to this highfalutin prep school summer camp to, where we had summer school to, get us ready to go to this scholastic. And it was nothing compared to what I experienced, when I was 7 in the sanctuary. And the school I went to from 3rd grade through 8th grade was a great school. I mean, really great school. I mean, that school was better than a lot of the colleges I've been at. Anyway, the only thing in this town, everything was owned by this family. And Mr. R and his wife, who was English, Irish English, and they met during World War II. He was a bomber pilot and he was stationed in England. And they got married and he came back after the war, went back to Maine. And so she's really smart. And she basically had bought up everything, a general store, they ran the post office, a gas station, ice house, smokehouse, and it had a very, very nice hotel slash restaurant right on the Long Lake. $3. And the general store was also a pharmacy, and it had a counter, right? And you could get a cheeseburger and a milkshake and whatever you wanted at the counter. And first went in there, and the summer, it was nice. It was right there. It was a prep school that was right in that town. And all the business, the boys would all go there and buy whatever they want. And Mr. Rice and Mr. Arm did real good under the tutelage of his new English wife, who was really great. 3 daughters, really beautiful, really smart. Oldest, I fell in love with first. She was 20, I don't know, 8 or 6. She'd just gone through medical school. He first went to college, pre-med, and they said, no, you can't go to medical school. Then she went to nursing school. And then she got a job in Boston at the big hospital there, where they had the doctor school. And they wouldn't let her go to medical school, but they would let her get a master's in hospital, business, right? Which meant medical school. So she got to go to medical school and get a degree with that, but it was called, hospital administration or something. And that summer after she graduated, she spent the summer in there at the lodge. And, first day I kind of settled in and we were told, oh, you probably get most of your meals down at the general store, right? I went down there and all of us kids who went to camp, we had like an account. The school, the camp would pay for it, send the bill to my parents. But that was the closest I ever came to like a credit card. And in there, started chatting up this really amazing looking woman. And she thought it was cute. And she showed, after she got up, she said, let me walk around town. She took me out and my parents, and everything. And we went into the nice restaurant on the lake. And she was telling me about everything about her family, parents, war, what her grandparents did, right, all that. And I cannot, if I eat anything,